Hi there, it's me, obviously. Who else would it be? It has come around to the time where I do an annual review of my channel. Much like every other year before it, I set a goal last year to try and keep a consistent upload schedule, which I think was almost successful before Christmas and has taken a fair New Year's nosedive. This is why I don't make promises. I will never do that unless I'm sure I can keep them. As a result, I've reviewed 14 games since my last recap, which is 4 less than last year and 7 less than the year before. The score spread has been wider this year though, with the highest rating at a 9 and the lowest at a 2, whereas last year I was capped between 5 and 9. A 9 rating was actually given to 5 different games this year, because I somehow picked out a few with some really strong performances. Space Hat was a fast-paced shooter with only a touch of motion sickness, but a great heap of fun and super satisfying once you got the mechanics down. Escape from Castle Claymount was a charming and clever puzzle game, with the only minor flaw being that it was possible to skip the entry cutscene by accident. But really, when I recapped my review, this seemed to be the only thing that could knock it down, apart from the fact that I wished there was more of it, and you didn't get to see too much of the big enemy. However, hitting games for being short can be a little harsh, and I did get over an hour out of it, so it's not that short. It's certainly longer than The Supper, and it holds its own well enough as a puzzle game, so I think I'll bump it up to a 9.5. The next game in the 9 spot was Blood Spear, which I wasn't fully sold on with myself at the time. I did really enjoy it and thought it had a creative final boss with nice visuals and was challenging enough. However, the story was a little too vague and there wasn't much context to the final boss, plus it had some clipping issues. Looking at what's around it, I think it's good to stay at a 9. I had more fun with it than Project Shoreline because of the challenge that came with the game genre, though I think Shoreline's visuals were a bit more stable. I don't think I found it more satisfying or better visually than Space Hat, however it didn't have any bugs, which Space Hat did, and it didn't have any control inaccuracies either. Secret Santa was the next one, which I reviewed at Christmas. It was a stealth game with 5 different levels and some really tough difficulty. Looking back at this one, I had a few minor gripes with it, some minor control inaccuracy, a little bit of visual distinguishing that wasn't there, a little bit of detection uncertainty. The game was very well constructed and the levels cleverly designed to force you to get your timing spot on, and they were varied in style to mix it up. The gripes I had could risk dropping it to an 8.5, but I think what they achieved with what they used was balanced well enough against those little flaws to keep it at its rank. Bloody Hell was the final 9, and again I was on the fence with this score between a 9 and a 9.5. This too had control inaccuracies with the dash mechanic, which can be a bit frustrating, but not game-breaking. It also has an audio cutout flaw which does minor damage to immersion, but again isn't crucial. However, it has an absolute ton of good stuff on top of that, and it's packed full of content for a free game, including collectibles. It's fun and satisfying and I really enjoyed it, and it was good enough to play twice to test both control inputs. I think some of the comments I had on it were enhancements rather than issues, so I think I'm also going to move Bloody Hell up to a 9.5. The other end of the scale had The Story Is You, Look Within, which I'm going to call a project rather than a game, since it doesn't even qualify as a walking sim due to the fact that you're no-clipping. I gave this a 2 out of 10, which felt kind of harsh because I know what the person was trying to go for, but looking back, the lowest score I've ever given is to the horror game Charlotte, which was basically a button-pushing and paper snippet reading simulator with JPEG window images. So really, that's the best thing I have to compare it to. Charlotte tried to have a story. The Story Is You wasn't trying to have one, but it was meant to be an introspective experience. Did it make me introspect? Maybe a little bit. So in a loose way, it achieved what it was after. Visually, Charlotte was a few default assets, though they were game premise relevant, some lightning flashes and shadows and glow. The Story Is You was a big castle, which didn't really seem game premise relevant, and because you could no-clip, you could see that the environment had a giant layer hole in it, and the objects clipped through the top of the castle. It was also JPEGs put around the map. They were double-sided JPEGs, but some of them caused FPS drops down to about 15 frames a second. So actually, when I take a look at the content, whilst The Story Is You was fractionally more successful at achieving its purpose, outside of that it actually seems to lose in comparison on most other facets. And that probably means it doesn't earn a higher score than Charlotte. So, despite feeling pretty mean, I'm going to drop The Story Is You to a 1 out of 10. From recapping my other reviews, I think the rest of the games can keep their scores. Project Shoreline was chill with nice visuals, some flaws with camera bumping and being able to escape the map, but overall it did what it wanted well and was simple and satisfying. The Way Down was difficult to rate with its surreal and absurdist themes, but what it intended to pass as a message landed well through its very simple features, so I can give it good points for doing what it wanted to do despite it being very basic. Speed Racer was a tricky, fast-paced runner game, but was very engaging because of its difficulty and good soundtrack backing the experience. Minute, or Minute, I still haven't figured it out, had some flaws here and there that teetered on the slightly unfair, as well as a deficit in some needed audio cues or visual distinguishing for when you dropped your key, which was basically your lifeline, but it had commitment to theme and some satisfying combat as well. Grim Hook was a great fun platformer and combat game with an emphasis on getting good airtime, but it handicapped itself by slowing you down at points when you had good momentum, and a bit of limitation on the final battle was caused by its own arena design. Apollon 8-8 was a retro shooter, simple and fun but suffered from its reward system not fully paying off enough to give the player satisfaction off a good performance. The game time ending up being limited because of a set amount of health with no way to earn it back, and the fact there's no global leaderboard meant game longevity and challenge was restricted to you keeping score on yourself, which can only last so long. Lay sat at the same score range, a puzzle and exploration game where you fly around on a ray to multiple islands to restore them and solve variable puzzles. This had plenty of good visual aspects and was a nice experience, but it also had a huge game-breaking bug that meant even though I completed it, it didn't consider itself completed, and there was nothing I could do about it. The final game was Doomba, where you play as a spaceship cleaning Roomba. It's meant to be sort of a cleaning game like Project Shoreline, but has a tiny bit of story and some comedy dialogue. The small bit of story gets you through it to fit the premise, but the actual cleaning mechanic causes the game to cut short since it gets rid of dirt piles when they're not entirely clean, and the only threat to you that's presented is a barely animated alien that's so inconsequential you can shove it around physically. This led to it feeling slapped together at the end, which is why I gave it a 4.5. Now, after the re-rates, this is where the final scores stand for the year of 2024 to 2025. So, what kind of things have been distracting me from reviews? Well, I have been involved in a bit of playtesting. First I did a bit of testing on a game called Cube Creatures, a Pokemon-style fan game with some surreal, distorted and comedy elements made by the creator of a game I reviewed last year called Sunrise. The maker's name is Louis Morrill, his style is very unique, and this kind of sensory overload, distorted spookiness makes for some creepy games. If you'd like to check out Cube Creatures, please do. The creator makes games to gain support for charities, and Cube Creatures was made to pull in awareness and support for Team Trees. So if you're interested, please give the game a go, and if you like it, donate to the charity as a way of payment. I did make a community post about it, so you can find the link on there, but it will be in the description as well. The other game, which I posted about in June, is called One More Experiment. It's made by Amber Crown Games, and the demo released for Next Fest, but it's still in development and the dev will be looking for playtesters. In fact, I think they currently are. So if you'd like to get involved with that, there's a link in the description or my community post also. It's a puzzle game functionally based off Portal, but the dev adds their own mechanics. Saying both those things, I haven't actually been able to dedicate myself to this playtesting as much as I'd like, nor the channel. Illness and technical issues haven't helped, but this leads me on to the usual question I tackle at the end of these. Where does my channel go from here? The short and sweet answer is that I'm not making any promises for regularity this year. As I've stated before, this is a hobby for me that I work around a full-time job. Unfortunately, I don't have the time, and more often not the energy either, to maintain a regular content schedule. I've learned that hard over the last few months. My daily life has got busier, and it's only going to continue to going forward. At one point, I was challenged by a commenter about my master plan for this channel, and it was very good for introspection. Whilst it's always good to have big dreams, I just don't have the capacity to be able to commit to what I would need to do to realise those right now. And I've had to accept that agreeing to commit to things and failing to follow through is often more inconvenient than never agreeing to them in the first place. The bright side is that I've kind of already done a trial run by missing uploads quite a lot lately, so for the people that have been around for the last few months, there may not be a huge change. The channel is staying and there's no formal hiatus. It's just a stated agreement that content will come when it comes, probably alongside my motivation. Sorry if that's not good news, but I'd rather hurt you with honesty than lie and disappoint. Since the hardest and most time-consuming part of the process I find right now is editing, I've considered doing unedited gameplay videos with informal reviews as a way to get around it. However, these would obviously be long plays, and I can't promise the same entertainment value as you'd get in a scripted, edited video. I've also considered streaming games too, but I've never done it before, so I can't guarantee any degree of quality or equal entertainment value. I'm still brainstorming ideas, but if you have any feedback on the above suggestions or any other suggestions, please do let me know. Otherwise, I think it's about time I stop talking. Thank you to all my channel supporters, those who've commented and engaged. I really appreciate your shared interest in my content. Keep yourselves well, and I will see you when I see you in the next video.